Headline, China, Russia quit dollar. They signed the deal last night to start trading with each other. Natural gas and oil from Russia for raw materials and rare earth minerals and finished goods from China. This is a big deal, and it's right down Joel Skousen's alley with his research. Joel, we've got about 22 minutes left with you. Appreciate you joining us. Break down what you think this signifies geopolitically.
Thanks, Alex. It's good to be with you. Let me give some perspective to this. Since the armistice, there's still technically a war, North Korea, South Korea. Since the armistice, there have been 150 acts of war on the part of the North Koreans versus the South Koreans or U.S. Just a brief rundown. 3 assassination attempts on presidents of state, dozens of kidnappings, 3 American soldiers killed at the border zone, 5 ships attacked, including the recent patrol boat attack, 3 airliners hijacked, 3 artillery attacks on the South, 2 missiles fired, 3 American reconnaissance aircraft attacked over the years. These are occurring almost twice a year ever since this has happened. There have been 4 bombs planted in South Korea by the North. There have been dozens of fishing vessels captured and held hostage.
The Pueblo.
And then there's the U.S. Pueblo, which is the last one on my list. A major U.S. reconnaissance ship captured, never returned, crew imprisoned. These are acts of war, and the U.S. has done nothing but pontificate. Now, I gave as background because I want to say that even though these appear to be huge provocations, it is my analysis they will not amount to anything. In fact, I think that Lindsey Williams' source is throwing out, or has been throwing out disinformation ever since the oil prediction, which was correct. They often do that, start with something correct, and then start to do things which haven't happened or won't happen. Now, I'm not downplaying the fact that China is the big problem and North Korea is its lackey. But I believe very strongly, strategically, that North Korea is being saved as a trigger event for World War III, something very big and much further down the line. In other words, Iran is not a diversion. Iran is the next country to be attacked. And you will mark my words, Alex, this will pass in so many words, and they will continue to placate North Korea for these egregious acts of war, do nothing to them. No regime change, no attacks, no retaliation. And North Korea will not, in fact, attack the U.S. fleet out there. But we will see a continual attack in the Middle East, and Iran will be targeted sometime this year.
To correct myself, because as I said it, I realized that it wasn't the full spectrum of what Williams' source, who he's now revealed, had told him, who clearly is an insider, that now Iran is on the map, but after that, to watch China and Russia because they were the big players. Do you agree with what Williams' source said? Yes, absolutely. As long as he's not saying that this is the immediate source, because it is not. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that there's a pattern of permissiveness with North Korea that is just unexplainable vis-a-vis the way that we treat Iran. If Iran, the U.S. has been begging Iran to do any one of these things, try an assassination attempt in Iraq, kidnap someone, have an artillery attack on Iraq, or a missile attack, or shoot down a U.S. aircraft. Can you imagine? We would be at war attacking Iran within 30 minutes if they did this. This would be God's gift to Obama, to George Bush, to give them an excuse to attack. And that just shows the hypocrisy. Iran is nowhere near the danger that North Korea is to the world with its weapons programs, with its proliferation of weapons, nuclear proliferation, its missile program, and yet we do nothing. In fact, we guarantee them no regime change. We guarantee no military interference. What was the 1988 event at the end of the Iran-Iraq war where I've seen it reported it's the biggest U.S. naval engagement since the end of World War II is how they bill it, where they destroyed a bunch of Iranian battleship. They called it Operation Praying Mantis. Yes, and it was very, very serious. At that time, of course, they didn't have the war on terror going on. They didn't have the provocations to be able to mount an attack on Iran. In fact, and so it was not anything related to the current war or current plans on attacking Iran.
You know, we had the major shoot down of one of the Iranian airliners at one time, too, which probably was, in fact, a mistake. But, you know, Iran it certainly helped to inspire a great deal of hatred towards America. And I think that's what, in essence, the Iranian attack will become, is sealing the nail on the coffin of the U.S. as the bully of the world. We're going to look very, very bad. Israel's going to look very, very bad in attacking Iran and destroying a lot of infrastructure there. But I think we have to be very careful to take this in perspective, what's happening in North Korea. I mean, look at the wordage of the United States. You know, we are outraged, they say, and yet we must insist on a measured, unified response to North Korean attack. And what do? They go to the Chinese and say, we want you to rein in your little puppet country. China does nothing. They never will do anything about China. The U.S. will never do anything about China's refusal to do that. I mean,
let me ask you this, Joel. Back in the mid-1990s, Bill Clinton gets the blame, and he deserves a large portion of it, for allowing Laura Allen Hughes to transfer the ICBM systems, the MERV, reentry blueprints, but also the head of ABB, the Swiss company, headed up by Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld, transferring the reactor systems to them as well. So clearly, why did the West allow AQCon Laboratories to develop nuclear weapons? Why did England, the United States, and Israel, to some extent, help give nukes to Pakistan, help give nukes to North Korea, but then freak out over Iran?
Well, as I say, this is our terrorists versus the ones that aren't in our control, the ones that we want to use for provocations of a World War III. And I think there is a very long-term process involved in this. I mean, we know, for example, that part of the nuclear spying ring was instrumental in giving Iran their start in their nuclear program. And they, in fact, gave them, according to the CIA, and this may be disinformation, flawed plans that wouldn't work, in fact. But the U.S. had very much to do with getting Iranian program started in nuclear war, of course, with Pakistan as well. I think we're looking at some very sophisticated levels of conflict creation here. The entire Pakistani India is a potential trigger event for major hostilities.
Well, Brzezinski admits that in his books, exactly what you're saying. I mean, he's pretty open about it.
That's right. But remember, it's complex in the sense that India was a client state of Russia for many years, and now it's starting to transit. The West is trying to woo India away from Russia's field of influence. Pakistan for years was a client state of China, and the U.S. successfully wooed China away specifically over the nuclear program. China was not giving nuclear weapons to Pakistan, and the U.S. came in through AQCon and did it. And that's what got all of the Chinese, or the Pakistani elite in the ISI and the controllers in the military tied to the U.S., and they've been tied there ever since. There's still a T-to-T going on between China trying to woo back Pakistan, but I'm not sure exactly how this is going to play out in the World War. I know that when it's finally launched, China's very, very worried about India being in its backyard. I mean, India's got as many potential soldiers as China does, and probably capable of better training. So if that turns on China at some point, they could be in trouble. So they're very, very interested in keeping hold of India and Pakistan. They've lost Pakistan. I don't think that'll ever come back again, except as a means of undermining India. And that's the counterpoint there. If India, as let me just go back. China is presently allied with Russia in their plans on attacking the West someday. But China knows very well that they'll have to fight Russia and break their bonds, just like Russia and Hitler had to finally fight it out. So China's very, very worried about Russian influence in India, and that's the reason why they took so much time to try to give arms and munitions and aid to Pakistan so that they could have a counterpoint against India. The U.S. has played into this by giving Pakistan nuclear weapons, knowing that Russia had given India nuclear weapons. The U.S. gave nuclear weapons to Pakistan in order to help the Chinese in their feeling of being able to counter Indian military influence. So I think this is part of the ploy of the West of playing into China's back pocket. In other words, we're helping you out. We're transferring technology. We're not trying to do it openly. We're playing like, I mean, even the Pentagon every year has this great assessment about the Chinese military threat, and they downplay it every year. And I think they've got this T to T going. They have this understanding with China. Don't worry, we're going to have to play up to our own people that we're, opposing your military. But they don't do anything against China.
Well, isn't this just a replay of the West building up Japan and enticing them to expand all over the Pacific before World War II?
Yeah, I think it is. I think China's going to play that same role in World War III. They're going to tie up the entire Pacific. They got a grudge match with Japan. They're going to take Japan all the way down to and including Australia and New Zealand. And that's why I don't recommend, Australia.
Well, can you imagine, though, what's going to happen? You want to see terrorism, as they call it. That's anybody that resists. Can you imagine what the Japanese are going to do if the Chinese actually try to physically take Japan?
Well, I think they will at least neutralize it. I mean, the Chinese really don't have a great deal of military. They've been dependent on the U.S. for so many years.
No, I understand. I'm talking about just the asymmetrical on the ground, what the Japanese will do once the Chinese visit. But they may just run them through a puppet, too.
Yeah, they could do that, too.
All right, Joel, stay there. I want to shift gears and see where you see this going in the long term, but also looking at what's happening in Afghanistan. This is out of Reuters. Afghan violence soars, insurgency expanding. Joel Skousen, finishing up. So what's your time frame on this World War III situation? What do you see unfolding in the interim? And then even the CFR last week said, hey, we better get out of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And they normally, on policy, as you know, publicly call the shots, kind of a lower house of the private corporate government. But now the military says, no, basically, we're not leaving Iraq. We're not leaving Central Asia. We're not leaving Afghanistan. And now, headline, Afghan violence soars, insurgency expanding, U.S. Violence in Afghanistan hit an all-time high in recent months as Western troops battled an increasingly sophisticated insurgency expanding across the country. The U.S. military said yesterday. So break it down for us.
Well, a couple of major problems. First of all, remember that, and I'm sure you know this, that CFR and other types in the elite will often start, when a position becomes unpopular, they'll start putting some of their advisors out, giving counter positions. Like Brzezinski came out against all of the Bush years and denouncing that, even though he was all pro-Soviet and everything during the Carter years. Now we're starting to come out and attack the Afghan war as unwinnable from some of the elite. They're positioning themselves for the fact that this will become a black mark. It will become an unpopular war, very unpopular very soon. And they're going to be having advisors positioning themselves for the Republican side who will start to attack the Afghan war as part of their presidential view. It's not going to get better. The Afghan police, for example, which is this is the crown jewel of our release from active combat troops, is to be able to let Afghan police take over. And they're so corrupt. There's so many of the tribal leaders that control the Afghan police that they simply, Afghan military trainers simply don't have any confidence that the Afghan police will do anything but cause a great deal of unrest within Afghanistan. They have even less support than the Karzai regime. So this is a non-playing plan that they've got to be able to, transfer autonomy to Afghan military and police forces.
But the social engineers had to know that as well, and they did. So what's the master strategy? Just hold down the area to pump out $500 million in opium, a black hole for weapons sales, and a way to have another base on the doorstep of China?